The Pacific, a massive puddle of blue stretching forever. Home to sharks, giant squid, and, let's be honest, probably a few sea monsters. Scattered across this ocean, tiny islands. Think palm trees, coconuts, hammocks swaying in the breeze. Paradise, right? Well, not exactly. Because despite all that tropical charm, hardly anyone actually lives out here. Why? Let's find out. And no, it's not for the reason you think. Take a look at the Pacific. Almost 64 million square miles of pure oceanic overkill. Scattered across this watery chaos are tiny islands and atolls. They're all grouped under one fancy label, Oceania. And at the center of it all, Australia. It's got almost all the land, most of the money, and still barely half the people. New Zealand and Papua New Guinea are the only real co-stars in what's basically the Australia show, and even then, it's guest appearances. Take those three out, and what's left? 3.6 million people scattered across the biggest swimming pool on Earth. That's not a region, that's a long-distance relationship. One that's explosive. In 2022, Tonga's Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai submarine volcano decided to cosplay as 1883 Krakatoa, a literal undersea fireworks show that cost $90 million, about 19% of Tonga's GDP. Imagine your house exploding and then realizing your entire bank account was in it. And it's not just Tonga. The whole area sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's a tectonic mosh pit. Fiji, the Solomons, Vanuatu, all sitting on a crust that can and does throw tantrums. Other islands aren't volcanic, but they might wish they were. You'll see why soon. They're all coral atolls, islands made out of things that used to be alive. The planet's most scenic graveyards. Coral grows, dies, and leaves behind skeletons, which eventually pile up into postcard-worthy islands. Gorgeous to look at, terrible to live on. Like a luxury apartment with no plumbing. Fresh water? That's the boss level. Not because it doesn't exist, but because finding it's a scavenger hunt designed by a sadist. Take Niue. It's a raised coral atoll where people literally had to crawl through caves just to find drinkable water. Wells, useless. Niue gets a little help from New Zealand, the responsible friend, but most islands, nope, they're on their own. Better hope it rains, or, die. And the best part? Coral is porous. Water runs through it like office gossip through a work Christmas party. It's impossible to stop. It forms a freshwater layer underground. Thin, fragile, and one rogue wave away from turning into seawater soup. Remember that for later. It's gonna come back, like your ex after you start doing well. So how do you grow when you can barely drink? Even the US wrestles with water shortages, and that place has billionaires launching bottled water into space. Out here, surrounded by ocean, clean water is rarer than a Yankees World Series win. Yeah, I said it. And it's not just about drinking. Crops like coconuts and breadfruit need water too. No water means no food. Desalination could help, but that's like saying a Ferrari could help you get to work. Sure, if you could afford one. Most islands can't. So people adapt or leave, because paradise looks a lot less tropical when your tap spits out salt water. There's another thing holding the Pacific Islands back: the ground. Most islands don't have soil worth bragging about. Coral just isn't built for farming. It's nature's concrete. Take Niue, for example. It has a thin layer of dirt barely deep enough for weeds. Other islands? They torched what little fertile soil they had, trying to jumpstart their economies. For millions of years, Nauru was a giant bird bathroom break, and birds are extremely generous. Their droppings fossilized into phosphate, a fertilizer goldmine. People started digging, and suddenly, Nauru was rich. Like 1960s Saudi Arabia with coconuts rich. But then the phosphate ran out. The money vanished, and the land was left looking like a toxic wasteland. Today, Nauru gets by selling citizenships and taking Australian aid to clean up the mess. Not every island's cursed, though. Fiji lucked out. Volcanoes gave it good soil and real water, a tropical cheat code. That's why you see Fiji water in stores, and why it's a heavyweight in sugar and fish exports. With nearly 1 million people, it's the biggest economy in Oceania outside the Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea trio. Fiji's the one island that figured out how to read the manual while everyone else is still pressing random buttons. But even Fiji hits a wall. It can't feed itself. Most of its food, things like wheat and rice, comes from Australia and New Zealand. Australia alone covers nearly 40% of Fiji's food market. Even its bottled water comes from abroad. Despite being the fourth largest water exporter in the world, but still imports bottled water from Italy, China, and the US. Make it make sense. It's like selling umbrellas and still getting wet. Manufactured goods? Forget it. Cars, planes, electronics, fuel, almost everything's imported. According to the World Bank, about 70% of Fiji's total goods and services come from overseas. The trade is worth more than its entire GDP. Fiji just doesn't have the infrastructure to make much on its own. It's like running a lemonade stand where you have to import the lemons, the sugar, the cups, and the stand. The saving grace? Ports. Lots of them. Suva, Lautoka, Levuka, Vuda, Malau, Rotuma, Wairiki, they're all managed by Fiji Ports Corporation. They keep the whole island from drowning in an economic tsunami. They're the island's arteries, pumping life and imports in and out. Other islands aren't so lucky. The Solomon Islands has 2 ports, Tuvalu has 1, and the ocean is trying to drown that one. Nauru doesn't even have a real port, just a glorified dock where big ships unload onto tiny barges that ferry goods to shore. It's slow, expensive, and completely at the mercy of the weather. And you thought Amazon Prime was slow, but Nauru is trying to fix that. They're building a proper port from scratch, ambitious for a coral island with no harbor, little money, and way too much ocean. Every shipment crawls across thousands of miles, and bad weather turns delayed delivery into a way of life. But building on coral is surgery with a sledgehammer. You have to dredge the reef, pour concrete walls, and hope it holds. Think China's artificial islands, minus the geopolitics, plus existential dread. The cost? Wrecking the island. Nauru's foundation isn't rock. It's fossilized sea life. It's fragile stuff that erodes faster than my career aspirations. And that coral sand that helps hold fresh water? It's light, airy, and gets hammered non-stop by waves. So when it's not dissolving, it's disintegrating. Remember this. It's going to be important soon. So Nauru's still trying to finish its port. With Australia's help, of course. The project kicked off in 2019, right before the world caught fire. The pandemic hit, work slowed, and the shiny new port that was supposed to open in 2020 got delayed at the low price of an additional 15 million Australian dollars. And the new opening date, nobody knows. Soon, eventually. Why are you asking me? Even when it's done, the world will have moved on. A 2020-era port in a 2050 ocean. But don't think this kind of mess only happens to the smaller islands. Let's talk about Wake Island. You've probably heard the name. Turns out it's another coral atoll made up of Wake, Peel, and Wilkes Islands. It's administered by the US, claimed by the Marshall Islands, and fought over by Japan in World War II. Apparently, strategic value is measured in a sunburn and a lack of fresh water. Resupplying Wake isn't easy. Not because of the distance, well, that too, but mostly because it can't host a natural harbor. The reef is too shallow. Ships can't dock without leaving a part of their hull behind as a souvenir, so just like Nauru, everything has to anchor offshore and be ferried in. Think of it as an aquatic DoorDash. Slow, wobbly, and 100% weather dependent. There is a 9,800-foot runway, courtesy of the US military. Great if you're an emergency jet, terrible if you're a crate of canned beans. Flying freight that far costs more than the cargo's worth, even for the United States, so Washington's not exactly lining up to build a harbor there. It's not worth the billions. Nauru doesn't have that luxury. It has to make do with what it's got, ocean freakouts and all. And the waves? They're not gentle. Anything built on coral has the same durability as a sandcastle at high tide. One strong swell, and your investment is floating away to Tasmania. Which is a problem, because the Northwestern Pacific cranks out about 26 tropical cyclones every year. 26. That's like nature hosting a demolition derby and inviting everyone. Property owners in Florida pay between $4,000 and $6,000 a year in hurricane insurance alone. And that's Florida, a place with infrastructure, money, and Disney. Though, to be fair, Florida man keeps things statistically interesting, but those premiums are higher than the entire GDP per capita of the Solomon Islands, Kiribati, and Vanuatu. The Marshall Islands barely clears the mark. So, yeah, in Oceania, hurricanes aren't just weather. They're an economy-destroying subscription service that never lets you unsubscribe. Oh, and if you like these map dives, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've charted enough ocean currents to qualify as maritime debris. Now add the high transport costs, especially when there's not a proper harbor. You can see why it's tough to task rebuilding here after disasters and why investment is minimal. Anyway, remember how the water supply depends on what's in the ground? In theory, a tropical storm or two should fix things. A little free desalination from the sky. But no. The same storms that refill the water table also turn it into a saltwater cocktail. And then there's the bright idea of building infrastructure on coral reefs. Ports, docks, resorts, all very impressive right up until you realize they destroy mangroves. Those same mangroves that act like nature's flood insurance. Coral reefs, too, are supposed to be barriers. Literally, giant ocean speed bumps that can reduce wave height by almost 90%. Now, imagine being an island like Nauru, bulldozing the reef to make a better harbor. Sure, ships can dock. Then the next storm turns the whole fleet into luxury housing for clownfish. People love to say climate change every time a hurricane shows up. It's practically Pavlovian at this point. Say storm and watch the talking points roll in. But scientists don't think global warming is creating more hurricanes. The oceans are just warmer, which means the ones that do form hit harder and last longer. Same amount, just meaner. And honestly, you don't need a hurricane to see what's going wrong out there. The danger's not in the natural disasters. It's in the slow, everyday grind. The kind that erodes livelihoods, then coastlines, and then hope. People always find new ways to make life harder, especially when it's someone else's life that pays the price. There are only 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and rats following humans wherever they go. And that means cats, nature's pest control. On ships, they were the most popular crew members, mostly because sailors didn't have Netflix. Ship cats kept morale up and the rats down. Assassins, sure, but cute. But in Oceania, the story turns feral. Australia's cats are less ship mascots and more fuzzy terminators. They kill over 3 million mammals a day, plus millions of birds, reptiles, and invertebrates. Even frogs aren't safe. These aren't pests they're taking out either. They're the locals, the ones that actually belong there. It's like releasing lions into a petting zoo and then acting surprised when attendance drops. And if Australia's ecosystem has been wrecked, imagine what's happening to the smaller islands. Tiny patches of land, hyper-fragile and about as resistant to ecological disaster as a paper umbrella in a cyclone. Take Fiji. The government considers feral cats the country's #1 threat to wildlife, which is why anyone bringing one in needs a permit and a microchip so authorities can track it. But it's already too late. Westerners brought cats generations ago. They're established. They're everywhere. And now their golden eyes are fixed on Yadwataba, the island home of the Fijian crested iguana. That island is still cat-free. For now. But the nearest cat colony, just 400 feet away. One short swim for catkind, one giant leap toward extinction. Turns out, when predators outbreed their prey, it doesn't end well. Rats arrived in Fiji around 3,500 years ago with the first settlers. Then, they immediately started terrorizing native frogs and birds like they owned the place. The Marshall Islands, same story, new species. Invasive black rats tore through Baikar Atoll and Jimo Islet. It was a seabird buffet, the same bird whose droppings once fertilized the entire ecosystem. The rats are gone now, but the damage remains. The birds were the gardeners, and without them, the system collapses. So, yeah, Humanity's been exporting chaos for millennia, sometimes in the form of war, and sometimes in the form of adorable, fuzzy serial killers. But rats will eat anything. Seeds, seedlings, McDonald's chicken nuggets, nothing is safe. They even make it harder for the forests to regrow. They've been eradicated in parts of Tonga, like Leyte Island in Vava'u, a small win in a long, depressing war. So maybe Tonga and the Marshall Islands are finally breaking that third law of human existence: death, taxes, and rats. But the damage? Already done. The ecosystem's not so much recovering as slowly limping home. And some islands aren't that lucky. Because rats weren't the final boss, another invader showed up. Smaller, meaner, and somehow even worse. Starting in the mid to late 20th century, Oceania got a new settler. It created refugees everywhere it went. Insects, geckos, birds, gone. Wiped out by something that sounds like a punchline but behaves like a horror movie. Yellow, crazy ants. Each one spits formic acid like a pocket-sized fire-breathing dragon. One ant? No big deal. But there are billions and billions of them now, and they're all angry, and they're all spitting. Introduced accidentally from Asia, they've gone full zombie apocalypse across Oceania. They're chewing through everything they touch and multiplying like bad ideas. On Johnston Atoll alone, a single colony took over a quarter of the island. 1,000 queens in a plot 20 feet wide. Even the US Air Force couldn't bomb that many, though I'm sure someone suggested it. They cost Australia over $3 billion in 2012. And that's before even counting the damage to biodiversity. Australia can take the hit, the Solomon Islands, not so much. So now, yellow crazy ants sit proudly on the world's 100 worst invasive species list, a hall of fame nobody wanted to join. Their invasions turned islands like Palmyra, 1,000 miles south of Honolulu, into quarantined labs. Bought by the Nature Conservancy in 2000 for $30 million, it's now half runway, half experiment, where visitors disinfect gear before landing. The island even exorcised its rats, the original freeloaders. Midway Atoll followed a similar fate. Once a World War II battlefield, now a wildlife refuge. Peaceful, beautiful, and slightly haunted. Then there's Kure Atoll, the end of the line. Literally, after Kure, it's just ocean until Japan. Nobody's ever really lived there, except the unlucky. Shipwrecked sailors who learned the hard way that GPS was invented too late. Ships still ground there, as recently as 1998. Humanity, undefeated in the category of what's the worst that could happen. Washington eventually gave up and turned it into a wildlife refuge. Now only biologists visit, cleaning up ghost nets like underwater janitors for crimes they didn't commit. And it's not just America getting in on the Save Nature, Lose Money club. Fiji's got its Yadua Islands. Kiribati, they went big. The Phoenix Islands Protected Area, 157,000 square miles. That's 11% of their ocean economic zone. Imagine giving up a tenth of your paycheck for the planet. That's commitment. Or desperation. Hard to tell sometimes. Then came the copycats. Everyone wanted their own marine sanctuary. It's like a regional influencer trend. #blessed, #ocean edition. And of course, the French had to show up with a flex. In June of 2025, French Polynesia dropped the mic. A marine zone so huge it makes maps get anxiety. 420,000 square miles. The world's biggest marine refuge. Sacré bleu. Great news for fish. Not so great for people. Every new sanctuary means another place humans can't touch. 2 centuries of damage, and now we're putting up do not enter signs. The Pacific's turning into one giant apology letter. But this still isn't the biggest threat to the region. Not by a long shot. Ready for the real problem? It's the view, the ocean, the thing slowly trying to wipe them off the map. Sea levels are rising, fast enough to matter, slow enough for people to pretend they're not. Let's head to Tuvalu. Meet Taukie Kitara. He's a local guy with a story that sounds poetic until you realize it's a warning. National Geographic reported that when he was born, his parents buried part of his umbilical cord under a coconut tree, a family marker. a sacred connection, an unwanted surprise for treasure hunters. When he was a kid, the ocean was 30 feet away. Now it's creeping closer, inch by inch. He says it's like the sea's getting hungry, and you know what? It is. Tuvalu sits just 10 feet above sea level. That's one big wave away from no longer exists. The government already knows it. They've basically sent out a preemptive evacuation notice. Building seawalls, like Venice's $7.5 billion MOST project? Impossible. Tuvalu's entire GDP in 2023 was $63 million. That's the kind of math where you don't even open up the calculator app. You just laugh and move on. MOST costs another $11.5 million a year just to run. Tuvalu couldn't afford the electricity bill, let alone the wall. And no, being the domain host for your favorite Twitch streamer isn't saving the economy. .tv isn't magic money. So, Tuvalu made a deal with Australia. 280 people a year can permanently relocate. Over 8,700 have already applied. That's 80% of the entire population. The rest are still hoping the ocean takes a day off. Give it a few decades, and Tuvalu will be gone. A country underwater, its people living in exile in Australia. Stateless, homeless, but hey, at least the internet will still think it exists. The .tv domain lives on. But Tuvalu's actually lucky. Australia was kind. Others weren't. The Pacific isn't sparsely populated because of rising seas or mutant ants. It's empty because people were taken, killed, erased. Entire cultures wiped away before the water even got a chance. But the biggest reason the Pacific is empty, it's not nature. It's history. When James Cook showed up, something terrible hitched a ride. Something invisible and unstoppable. Europeans brought dysentery, measles, and smallpox. All the hits, and none of the vaccines. Paradise turned quarantine. The Pacific Islands lit up with epidemics in the 18th and 19th centuries, like the Americas after Columbus, just with better scenery. And sure, that kind of disaster you can almost forgive. Medicine was basically medieval back then. Leeches, mercury, hope, but the next wave, not so forgivable. While Cook was sketching islands, another set of ships across the world was catching heat. Abolitionists were finally torching the transatlantic slave trade. By the late 1800s, it was over. Brazil outlawed slavery in 1888. Humanity high-fived itself. We did it! Slavery's over! Yeah, about that. While the West was polishing its halo, a brand new form of slavery was quietly thriving on the opposite side of the planet. You've probably never heard the word blackbirding. It was human trafficking, island style. It kicked off in 1863 with one Robert Towns, a man whose Wikipedia page should probably come with a warning label. He hauled 67 islanders to Queensland to work sugar and cotton plantations. The British Empire had banned slavery 30 years earlier, but banned is easy when your nearest cop is 10,000 miles away and travels by sailboat. From 1863 to 1904, about 60,000 Pacific Islanders were trafficked, stolen, tricked, or offered opportunities ahead, which is Victorian for kidnapped. They cut cane under the Australian sun, laid down railroads, and built wealth they'd never see. Sweat equity with no equity. It ended in 1906, but don't cheer yet. It wasn't morality that killed it. It was racism. Australia rolled out the White Australia policy, a whites-only sign the size of a continent. The fix? Deport nearly everyone. Only 2,500 were allowed to stay. The rest were shipped home to islands they hadn't seen in decades, like unwanted Amazon returns. Britain wasn't much better, and then came Japan, the new kid on the imperial block. Modern, militarized, and desperate to prove it could be just as ruthless as the old guard. The global message was clear. Cruelty wasn't dying out. It was leveling up. At first, it looked like maybe it wouldn't all go to hell. Japan took over Germany's old Pacific Islands after World War I and actually made things better. Doctors, vaccines, real medicine. The locals stopped dying from European germs for 5 minutes. Progress. But then came the fine print. Locals couldn't work in industry or shipping, not even fishing. Japan cornered the market on their own fish. It was like being banned from your own fridge, a move that feels suspiciously familiar. Just swap Japan for China and the Philippines and you've got a reboot. Only this version had fewer headlines and zero options to fight back. Then the 1940s hit and everything broke again. War, occupation, horror. Japan rolled into Nauru, massacred 39 leprosy patients. Their war crimes apparently had no minimum age or moral standard. They deported 2/3 of the population. 1,200 people sent to Truk, now Micronesia. New location, same misery. Labor camps, starvation, disease. About 500 never came home. Blackbirding 2.0, now with uniforms. Japan held Nauru till the bitter end. Only surrendered when Hirohito realized, yeah, nukes are bad for business. But peace didn't fix it. The game just changed players. Same board, new flag. The great powers kept batting the Pacific around like a ball no one wanted to catch. The US jumped in next, annexing Hawaii through backroom deals. But that was the warm-up. The main event? The Marshall Islands. A place so remote, it's basically the universe's You Are Here arrow. 29 coral atolls north of New Zealand. People didn't even get there until the Bronze Age. Austronesians brought coconuts, bread taro, and chickens, the original carry-on luggage. Enough to live on, not enough to build empires. So, of course, empires came to them. Germany claimed the Marshalls. Japan took them. America took them from Japan. And then, because apparently that wasn't dramatic enough, America nuked them. 67 nuclear tests between 1946 and 1958, 23 at Bikini Atoll alone. Bikini got the grand finale, the biggest bomb the US ever built. Paradise turned to powder. And the irony, the name stuck. Bikini became a swimsuit, a marketing move so bizarre it's like naming lingerie after Chernobyl. On March 1st, 1954, the shrimp went off. The cutest name ever for a 15-megaton tantrum, 1,000 times stronger than the bombs dropped on Japan. The blast turned coral into dust, fell back like snow. Pretty, until you remember its poison. The locals? Nobody asked them if they wanted front row seats to the end of paradise. In the late 60s, the island was safe. By 1978, never mind. The water was laced with strontium, and plutonium showed up in people's waste. Uncle Sam promised $561 million in damages. The check is still in the mail. And if that's not depressing enough, America nuked its own island, Johnston Atoll. Claimed in 1934, it was tropical and isolated. So naturally, the perfect place to blow things up. 16 nukes between 1958 and 1963, because why stop at one bad idea? Then Congress got creative. Let's try our chemical weapons too. Same island. Great plan. 400,000 chemical-laced rounds, 2,000 tons of nerve agent, the whole place razed. The only living thing there now? Ants. The yellow crazy kind. Coincidence? So far we've seen cursed islands, accidental science experiments, and world powers treating the Pacific like a sandbox full of hand grenades. You'd think people would steer clear, but not every island got the horror movie edit. Hawaii, now that one got the highlight reel. The Annexation Club didn't just want sugar. They wanted real estate with personality. Postcards that sell themselves. Beaches, volcanoes, 4 of them are active. Mauna Loa, Kilauea, Walalai, and Loihi. That's the underwater one. That's basically a lava submarine. Scary? Not really. The locals knew better. Lava meant life, fertile soil, free fertilizer from the fiery pits of hell. It was perfect for taro, sweet potatoes, and, of course, pineapples. Capitalism's favorite fruit. Add fish, chicken, pigs, and it's an instant paradise meal plan. Those volcanoes didn't just sprinkle nutrients around. They sculpted the islands, made them taller, stronger, more dramatic. Like Hawaii showed up to the Pacific and asked for the premium package. Height means water. Rivers, lakes, waterfalls that look photoshopped. Take Wailuku on the Big Island. Pearl Harbor gets all the fame, but Hawaii's loaded with ports. 10 of them, the lifeblood of the state's economy. Everything comes in by ship. Food, fuel, you name it. It's not cheap to live in paradise, but people here are doing fine. Turns out island living hits different when you're in the US tax system. Hawaii's always been full of people though. Long before James Cook came sailing in with his germs and curiosity. Around 300,000 lived here, maybe even up to 1.5 million. The real disaster wasn't isolation, it was contact. Western contact. Epidemics hit like an invisible invasion. And Hawaii wasn't alone. Tahiti, same story. Before Europeans showed up in the 1760s, the place had between 110 and 180,000 people. Why? Because those weren't just pretty islands. They were engineered by volcanoes, the shield kind. Look from above and they resemble giant Spartan shields from 300. This is Tahiti! But, with palm trees. The volcano died, but it left behind everything a civilization could ask for. Fertile soil that holds water, high cliffs, deep valleys, beaches with black sand that looked like they were imported from a luxury spa, and rivers, long ones. Papeano'o runs 20 miles across the island. Mount Orahena, the highest point in Tahiti, over 7,300 feet, tall enough for snow in the tropics. The snow melts, the runoff feeds 35 tributaries, and all those waterfalls you see in travel ads where influencers pretend they just stumbled into them. And it's not alone. Raiatea has the Wharoa River. Boats can actually sail up to it. A tropical river cruise, no alligators included. With that much fresh water, Tahiti could grow almost anything. Bananas, breadfruit, citrus, nonos, a full produce aisle powered by geology. And the volcano didn't stop there. It built harbors, real ones, deep, safe, postcard perfect. Papeete became the big one. Bora Bora turned into the fancy one, and cruise ships love it. And yes, they're even bigger than cargo ships. So Tahiti, it's got the works. Soil, water, ports, tourists, trade, paradise with infrastructure. So Hawaii and Tahiti got lucky. They thrive because of the ground beneath them. Literal plot armor. The distance from the mainland? Irrelevant. The volcanoes did the heavy lifting. They made the land high enough to laugh at rising sea levels. Laugh politely, of course. Meanwhile, the smaller atoll states, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Tokelau, they've got nothing but salt, sunlight, and a shipping schedule. Every basic need comes by boat. Water, food, hope. For humans, living on an island not named Hawaii or Tahiti is a tropical catch-22. Build too much, and you wreck the fragile ecosystem that keeps you alive. Build too little, and you stay stuck. A dot, a speck, a postcard, no one mails anymore. It's a balancing act. Life on a tightrope stretched over salt water. The Pacific isn't empty. It's exclusive, like a nightclub that only lets in islands with altitude. The ocean, the soil, the ecosystem, and the empires. They're the bouncers. They decide who gets to stay. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.